He was supposed to ignite a new dynasty in Edmonton, the flash of his one-timer lighting a path out of darkness. Drafted first overall in 2012, Nail Yakupov arrived with Ovechkin-level hype, highlight reel swagger, and a grin wide enough to stretch from Tatarstan to Alberta. Yet flash forward to today, and that grin is harder to find. At 31, Yakupov is skating in the KHL for the third different club in 2 seasons, traded twice for nothing more than cap relief and a promise of future considerations. Fans barely notice the transaction ticker anymore. How does that happen? How does a consensus top prospect, one blessed with a rocket shot, blinding speed, and enough junior production to make veterans blush, shrink into one of the league's most spectacular cautionary tales? The answer isn't a single villain or a simple headline. It's a messy collision of ego, mismanagement, culture shock, and bad timing. An avalanche that buried a kid unequipped to dig himself out. The cracks appeared before draft night, widened during his chaotic rookie splash, and finally swallowed him when the support beams in Edmonton collapsed. But every fall has stages, and each stage tells us something larger about talent, development, and the razor-thin line between star and bust. Let's pry those stages apart, because the first fissure opened long before he ever pulled on an Oilers sweater. But hidden inside those glowing scouting reports, the warnings were already blinking red. In the spring of 2012, Yak City banners draped Rexall Place. Edmonton fans, fresh off back-to-back first overall picks, believed a third would finally flip the rebuild switch. Nail Yakupov looked like the surest bet on the board. 80 goals and 170 points in just 107 OHL games. A World Junior performance that featured 9 assists in 7 outings, and highlight packages that made scouts mutter Kovalchuk under their breath. His one-timer exploded off the stick as if spring-loaded, and his skating stride devoured ice in 3 ripping cuts. Analysts pointed to the swagger, the charisma, the marketable grin. Even the so-called Russian factor lost its bite. Yakupov had spent 2 high-profile North American seasons in Sarnia and seemed as comfortable joking with Canadian reporters as he was celebrating with teammates. When then GM Steve Tambellini called his name first overall, the building shook. 3 straight number 1s, Taylor Hall, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and now Yakupov looked like destiny. The Oilers believed they had landed a right-wing artillery piece to flank Hall's left-side fury. The fanbase envisioned 30-goal seasons on autopilot, yet beneath the confetti, one scouting director whispered, "Talent's undeniable, but does he have any breaks?" That whisper foreshadowed everything, and the first proof erupted only 6 months later on the world stage. At the 2012 World Junior Championship, Russia upset Canada, and 18-year-old Yakupov delivered an interview more memorable than the game itself. Shirt soaked in sweat, eyes blazing, he mocked Canada's pre-tournament bravado, crowed about silencing a sold-out arena, and concluded with a fist pump that screamed, "Get on my level." It went viral back home. Russian fans loved it, but NHL execs shifted in their seats. Toronto's Brian Burke later called Yakupov the worst draft interview I've ever done, bluntly stating he'd have passed even if Yak fell to 5th. Other scouts grumbled about an I, me, mine mindset, a refusal to discuss defensive details, and an almost allergic reaction to questions about back-checking. Still, few dared drop him on their draft boards. The flash was intoxicating, and Edmonton was starving for hope. In hindsight, the warning signs read like neon. A puck-dominant rover who cheated for offense, bristled at criticism, and felt bulletproof because junior defenders simply couldn't touch him. But hype deafens even experienced ears, and the Oilers needed a box office jolt as much as they needed a scorer. And for one dizzying lockout-warped season, that gamble looked brilliant. The 2012-13 NHL campaign was hacked to 48 games by CBA chaos, but Yakupov arrived like a caffeine rush. 17 goals and 31 points as a teenager, projected to 29 and 53 over a full schedule. He capped it with an overtime winner against LA, sliding the length of the offensive zone on his knees, arms pumping like piston rods. Old school purists gasped, kids ordered jerseys. Coach Ralph Kruger kept systems simple, chip pucks north, crash space, shoot on sight, and Yakupov thrived. Analysts joked that every shift was either a goal chance for or a breakaway against, but when the puck went in, no one cared. The early verdict: electric, raw, unstoppable once he learns defense. Yet that plan hinged on one crucial variable: stability. Instead, Edmonton sacked Kruger that summer, triggering a coaching carousel that would spin Yakupov into disorientation. Next autumn, the music stopped and Yak had nowhere to sit. Dallas Eakins replaced Kruger with a fitness-first, structure-heavy system that punished freelancing. Yakupov's minutes tumbled, his turnovers spiked, and by Christmas, he was a -25 lightning rod for talk radio rants. He finished 2013-14 with just 11 goals, 24 points, and a gruesome -33 rating. It wasn't a slump, it was a free fall. The numbers masked deeper turbulence. In 4 Oilers seasons, Yakupov worked under 5 head coaches: Eakins, McTavish, interim, Todd Nelson, and finally Todd McClellan, each preaching a new philosophy, benching him for different sins, then moving on while the kid absorbed the blame. The franchise itself stumbled to a 103-153-38 record over the span. Losing corroded the locker room, veterans whispered about selfish play, and the local press tallied defensive lapses like a dark comedy punchline. Advanced metrics shoved another dagger. Of 360 NHL forwards with 500+ minutes that year, Yakupov ranked dead last in expected goals against per 60. Coaches begged him to adjust. He doubled down on offense. The marriage spiraled. When GM Peter Chiarelli finally flipped him to St. Louis for a prospect and a 3rd-round pick, fans shrugged. That was the final brutal verdict: indifference. But St. Louis was convinced a change of scenery could light the fuse again, if only for a spark. Yakupov landed in Missouri talking redemption. Blues coaches started him beside Vladimir Tarasenko, hoping Russian chemistry might ignite. Instead, Yak drifted in and out of the lineup, clipped by healthy scratches and clipped again by limited ozone starts. He finished the year with 3 goals in 40 appearances. Colorado offered one more lifeline: a 1-year, $875,000 prove-it contract. Early preseason looked promising: speed bursts, 2 snipes on the power play, but patterns are stubborn. Jared Bednar eventually stapled him to the 4th line, citing detail issues. 16 points in 58 games later, the phone fell silent. No NHL team called that summer. In pure numbers, the decline was staggering, from 0.65 points per game as a rookie to 0.27 with the Blues, down to 0.28 in Colorado. The league had rendered its verdict, and so Yakupov crossed the ocean expecting a reset. Instead, the same roller coaster awaited him. SKA St. Petersburg signed Yakupov to a splashy 2-year deal and got immediate fireworks. 23 goals in 47 outings, threads of the old magic. Then the sequel bombed. Just 20 points the next season, marked by lingering injuries and whispers of disinterest. By 2020, he'd been flipped to Vityaz, then rerouted to Amur Khabarovsk for straight cash. Nothing screams fallen star louder than a cash-only swap, but Yakupov kept chasing ice. Neftakimik Nizhnekamsk, Kunlun Red Star, and as of November 2024, back to Avangard Omsk. Omsk's GM praised his elite release, and early in the 2024-25 campaign, he rattled off 8 goals in 15 games, stirring faint NHL rumors. A Russian reporter floated the idea of a PTO with a Pacific Division club if he finished the season healthy. Skeptics rolled eyes. Believers posted grainy goal clips on X. Whether that audition materializes hardly matters to the cautionary morale, because by now, every new start feels like the same movie on shuffle. Hot streak, cold crash, journeyman trade. So whose fingerprints truly smudge this portrait? Yakupov's or Edmonton's? Let's weigh the evidence. First, Yakupov himself. Multiple coaches testify he skipped video sessions, bristled at defensive drills, and zoned out when play left the offensive zone. In a 2022 Russian interview, Yak admitted he never enjoyed details, only scoring, a confession that reads damning in hindsight. Skill is the spark, habits are the engine. He never built the engine, yet context matters. The Oilers of 2010-15 were a circus. Veteran mentors were scarce. The roster skewed young, and management leaned on lottery luck instead of patient development. Compare his peers. Taylor Hall blossomed only after escaping to New Jersey. Jordan Eberle reset on Long Island. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins survived but required a Swiss Army knife makeover. Stability raises floors. Edmonton supplied quicksand. Add culture shock. An 18-year-old from Nizhnekamsk tossed into Alberta winters under a microscope. Plus the crushing label of savior. And failure feels less surprising. The moral is messy. Yakupov's ego set the conditions, but Edmonton's chaos lit the fuse. And for every fan chanting tank for franchise savior, that's the sobering knot in the stomach. Tanking can land you Connor McDavid, or it can land you Nail Yakupov. Raw talent dazzles, but talent alone withers without structure. Since 2000, only 3 first overall picks have failed to even flirt with stardom: Stefan, Daigle, and Yakupov. All 3 share 2 threads: rushed NHL timelines and unstable organizations. Yakupov remains a footnote in Edmonton's journey, a trivia answer alongside the cup banners they still chase. But his story resonates far wider. For prospects, it's a warning that confidence without adaptation turns a weapon into a crutch. For teams, it's proof that shiny draft lottery balls aren't magic beans. They need soil, sunlight, and patient gardeners. As the 2025 rumor mill churns, Yakupov trains in Omsk, eyes fixed on one more North American encore. Maybe it never comes, maybe it does, and he nets a handful of nostalgic goals before fading again. Either way, the cautionary echo endures. Greatness is never guaranteed, not by draft slot, not by junior highlight tapes, and not by crowd-pleasing celebrations. It's built, and anything built carelessly breaks spectacularly. Who deserves the larger share of blame? The player who refused to evolve, or the franchise that never gave him a chance to? Drop your take below, Yak City believers and skeptics alike. And if you crave the untold truths behind hockey's biggest what-ifs, smash subscribe and ring that bell, because the next story might just rewrite another fading legend.